Should you be optimistic or pessimistic about the economy and how it's going to impact your wallet this year? Well, I'm leaning on the side of optimism. There are 5 things that I want you to pay attention to in the coming year. If you do that, you are going to position yourself to really thrive in 2025. When I'm on social media, I pay close attention to what people are talking about. I want to know what their money worries are. What are they concerned about this year? I keep hearing that people are concerned about how their investments are going to do and should they make changes. I think you should not make any changes right now. Being invested in the stock market in particular is a long-term plan. And I want you to remember that feelings are not facts when it comes to investing. You want to be sure you have the facts. If you have a substantial amount of money, I hope you're working with a financial advisor or at least a stockbroker so that you know what the trends are and you get some smart advice to make good decisions. But if you're just concerned about what's going to happen this year in terms of the economy, well, stocks will go up, stocks will go down. And it's always better to just write it out unless you're really poorly invested. And like I said, diversification really is key. That lowers your risk. So sometimes you just have to write it out. And if you do that, you might be pleasantly surprised by the end of the year. I do think it's going to be a good year for the economy. Coming up next, something else that I think you really should pay attention to, and it will help to decrease your stress about money. If you really want to decrease financial anxiety, get yourself an emergency fund. If you're starting from scratch, that's okay. Start today, even if you've got $10. Okay. That is the beginning of your emergency fund. Shoot for 1 month's worth of expenses. And by that, I mean, calculate how much it costs you per month to live where you are, including all of your financial obligations, just the minimum. Okay. You don't have to get a pedicure every single week if you don't have an emergency fund. So for now, let's just go with what you would need just to get by, on essential things. Once you hit a month, I want you to shoot for 3 months and then 6 months and then 9 months, eventually a year. As you start to accumulate this fund, I want you to keep it in a high yield savings account. I really like these for emergency funds because you're going to get a better return. I also like money market funds as well. Do a little research, get the best rates you possibly can. Now, with high yield savings accounts, they aren't as great a return as they were, say, 6 months ago before they started decreasing the rate. But they're still really good. They're around 4 to a little over 5%, and that beats anything you're going to get in a savings account with a traditional bank. And once you have an emergency fund, you're going to feel so much better. The world is very unpredictable. Yes, I think the economy is going to be good sometime this year, but that doesn't mean that we're all going to be immune to unemployment or some sort of medical disaster we could have. It's so important to have that emergency fund. I remember many years ago, I needed a new roof and it was going to cost $12,000. Think about that. $12,000 for a new roof. And I had to have a new roof. I had been in this home for so many years and I wanted to take good care of it. I wanted to preserve it for resale, of course, which I knew I would do after my kids were grown, and I did. So it was worth the investment. But if I had not had an emergency fund, that would have been a serious issue. I had one kid just about to go to college. An emergency fund will help you survive the unpredictable nature of life. And it will help you just to have some financial peace of mind. Money doesn't buy happiness, but it does give you peace of mind. Now, next, I'm going to talk about something that we all need to pay attention to, but you might not think it's important. but it really does impact your wallet. A couple of times in the past year, the Fed has lowered the interest rate. This has a direct impact on your credit card interest rate. If you have debt, this is something you really do need to pay attention to. Credit card APRs, the interest rates, are very high right now. They're averaging around 23, 24, sometimes 25%, depending on the type of credit card you have. So when they lowered the rate, the credit card APR is tied directly to that rate, to the prime rate. And so when the Fed lowers the rate, the prime rate goes down by the same amount, which makes the credit card interest rate go down by that same amount. So when it goes down, if you've got debt, you're going to pay a little less interest. But your biggest problem really isn't getting, a half a percentage point break on your credit card debt. You want to just get out of credit card debt. So 2025 should be the year that you do that. And if the rate's a little bit lower, well, that's certainly a benefit for you. But focus on the big picture, how much you're really spending when you're carrying debt on a credit card. It's just toxic. So do what you can to get rid of that. I've seen talk on social media of there being a credit card interest cap of around 10%. I'm skeptical that that would actually happen, certainly not a permanent cap. We could see a temporary cap to help people who are in serious debt and have trouble paying their bills. Right now, the credit card delinquency rate for subprime borrowers is 22%. We haven't seen that since the subprime home mortgage crisis in 2010. So do what you can to get out of debt. And it'll be nice if you get a break on credit card interest rates beyond what the Fed is going to do. But I wouldn't count on that. Just start working on it right now. This is the year you get out of debt. I do recall a few months ago when the Fed last changed the rate, lowered it just a bit. They said, we're going to lower the rate fewer times than we anticipated next year. Now, this ties into the first thing I talked about with investments and why you shouldn't react emotionally. When the Fed said that, the stock market went down. It didn't go down because the lower rate made it go down. It went down because the Fed said we're going to do fewer rate cuts next year. And that spooked the market. It tries to determine what comments like that mean. And sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong. But regardless of the reason for it going down, it gets over it and it usually comes back up. Again, diversification is key. Next, let's talk about how to make the most of your personal economy, no matter what the economy is doing in 2025. And I'm telling you, you can make this work for you. One thing you absolutely need to do to succeed financially in 2025 is to set up a realistic budget. And notice I said realistic, not the budget you wish you could have if you had more money, but a realistic budget that works with your income. And do keep in mind that throughout the year, there are going to be changes. There's going to be a lot of cuts in government spending this year. At least that's what we're promised. We'll see what happens, but that's going to impact the economy in a good way, I believe. We could even see some prices go down at some point. Would that be great? But you want to be sure every quarter that you check this budget and you adjust it for what's going on in your life. Either now the dollar is buying more groceries than it did before, or maybe you've gotten an income increase like a raise or a bonus, or maybe you've lost your job or gotten a decrease in salary for some reason. I hope not, but anything can happen in this world. So be sure that you adjust it. And that way you are on top of your money all year long, and you can adjust to what's going to be happening. And yes, I do think there will be some changes in the economy, and that's how you roll with it. All right. You have a budget that works for your own personal economy, and then you adjust for changes around you. This way, you're not at the mercy of the U.S. economy. You are calling the shots. You're the boss of your budget. Next, let's take a look at something that I have always recommended to people, and sometimes they'll look at me like I'm insane, but they usually agree with me in the end. When I was in my 20s, I started working on increasing my income so that I could pay off my credit card debt. I was finally getting my money under control. Still had a ways to go, though. So I'd asked for a raise, and I got one. I also started looking into how much was being withheld on my paycheck and discovered that they were over withholding for me. I would end up with like a $1,500 or $2,000 tax refund. And back then, everybody would just cheer and shout, "Look at me, I'm awesome for getting this." The thing is, what you're doing when you get a big refund like that is you're giving the government an interest-free loan. Now, if this is the only way you can get yourself to save money, well, okay. I still don't like it. But look at how much is being withheld in your paycheck and see if you can adjust that. My goal is always to break even. And I'd also rather have to pay $200 or $300 than get back $2,000 because that means I've had that money all year and it's been working for me. You can save more money this way, put it in an account like a high yield savings account, and you're getting more interest on it. So think about that. Check out your withholding for 2025 and see if you need to make some adjustments. And look at your state tax too, if you live in a state that has a state income tax. I did that too and saved a little bit more there. It's so important to take a look at those taxes. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. We talked about 5 things I want you to pay attention to so that you can financially thrive in 2025. And think of these as goals, not as resolutions. I find that resolutions just don't have the same sticking power, but a goal, set a concrete goal, and you're more likely to stick to that. If you're enjoying my podcast, please give this episode a like and subscribe. And whether you're watching me on YouTube or listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, I really appreciate the time that you've given me today. And I look forward to seeing you next time.